All right, hi guys. So I know this is different than normal, um, but I don't want to just give you gobs of information in a PowerPoint and just have you skim through it for answers. So the way we're going to do like lectures for the rest of the year, if I give you like a PowerPoint or lecture slides to answer questions with, is that I'm going to screencast the slides on my computer and just have an audio recording so that you can at least listen to my voice and kind of explain it. So, like during lectures, when we're doing notes in class, normally I'm explaining more than what's listed. And so most of the time, if you have a PowerPoint or like a lecture or like notes or whatever on Schoology for the rest of the year, it'll be a video posted with the slides in the video. So we're talking about World War One now, and specifically, how does World War One start? What's going on that causes it to start? And we'll talk about that acronym MAIN again, even though you probably watched a video on it at this point. So when we talk about World War One, at this point in history, this had been the largest conflict in history. You'll see deaths range anywhere from like 7 million to like 35 million, and so you'll see very different numbers. That the difference is because sometimes they include, um, sometimes they're including like civilian deaths, sometimes they're only counting military deaths. Another 20 million were wounded. And sometimes the other reason why you'll hear casualties. So casualties can mean deaths and wounded. So that's sometimes why you see majorly different numbers as well, is because some are only counting the deaths, some are counting wounded and deaths. 1 in 4 soldiers, so 25% of soldiers during World War One, whether they're from Germany or the U.S. or France or somewhere else, they didn't return home. So here you can see again from the major countries involved on the Allied power side and the Central power side, and like their deaths. So France and Russia lost the most people on the Allied side. Germany and Austria lost the most people on the Central power side. So here you can see at the start of the war, the main 3 countries that become known as the Central powers are Germany, Austria, and the Ottoman Empire. And then the 3 main countries in Europe that become known as the Allied powers are France, Great Britain, and Russia, as well as others, obviously, on both sides. So let's talk about Maine. So there's a variety of things that lead to World War One, and it's kind of hard to remember them all. So historians have liked to use this acronym MAIN because most of the events that are leading to conflict in Europe can fall under one of these letters in this acronym. So the M in Maine stands for militarism. So basically, a whole bunch of countries in Europe were creating stronger militaries during this time. And a lot of countries believed that you should have a strong military force, a strong standing army, and aggressively defend your land or promote your national interests. So if you feel like you should be gaining more land or take over a chunk of borderland that you think is yours, go for it. Specifically, the building up of militaries, you see this conflict between Germany and Great Britain leading into World War One. Germany wants to have as strong of a navy as Great Britain's, and so Germany starts to build up their navy to be bigger, and Great Britain then sees this as a threat, and then they continue to build their navy. Germany also was enlarging other areas of their military as well, building a bigger standing army, new military technology, the biggest and the best of the weapons. And Germany, it's like they were almost already planning for a war to happen because they were creating war plans and ideas of what they would do in case of war on several different like I think this was in the 1870s they created this. So a ways or not 1870s, sorry, 1890s they were creating this. So this was a long time before World War One actually breaks out, and Germany's already drawing up war plans. The Schlieffen Plan was just basically a plan to win a war if in case of war with Great Britain or France or Russia. Britain, France, and Russia also began to prepare in case of war, and um, France and Russia and Great Britain were also in an alliance called the Triple Entente, leading into World War One. The other reason for this conflict leading into World War One was alliances. So lots of countries in Europe were forming alliances to hopefully maintain peace and have a little more security, but it actually led directly into World War One becoming a world war. So if you think of like why, so why does creating alliances create a world war? Well, if you're actually going to follow through with your alliance and you're going to back up your alliance system, if one member of the alliance goes to war, then it means all members of that alliance have to go to war. And so you create a world war in a sense because of alliances. Now, again, the two main alliances before World War I starts, you can see it there on the map. It was Germany formed a military alliance with Austria-Hungary and Italy. This was called the Triple Alliance, and you can see it in red there. And again, also, I told you about the Triple Entente. That was made up of first just France and Russia, but Great Britain too joined in on this after Germany started building up their military and after Germany was involved in being kind of in other areas of the world. Now, some European leaders believed that these alliances would create a balance of power in which like nations would have equal strength. And therefore it would like decrease the chance of war, but really it didn't decrease the chance of war. It just ensured that if a war broke out between two countries, it would mean a war breaking out between various countries and creating what's known as a world war. The I in Maine stands for imperialism. Imperialism is when one country or nation exerts its power over another. So you think of like we talked about the age of exploration and like Great Britain and France and Portugal and Spain and all these countries that are going to other parts of the world and claiming that area as their own, as a new colony, or they say New Spain or New England. And so we see that not just some of these powerful countries that had done in the past, like France and Great Britain, but other countries now are wanting to expand as well, like Germany. Like I already said, by the late 1800s, Britain and France, they had already done this. They were imperialistic in the 1700s and even into the 1600s. So now they already had huge empires and lots of colonies all around the world. But Germany had just become a country in the 1870s, and they were just gaining power and strength as a country. And the German emperor, Kaiser, which is like another name for king, that's what they called him, Kaiser Wilhelm II, he wanted to strengthen Germany, both their military and to add more colonies for Germany. Now, ironically, when Germany wants to do the same thing that Britain and France and the US and other places have done already, 100 years before, they suddenly are up in arms like Germany's being really aggressive. But ironically, they had done the same thing. So I do find it ironic that they get all freaked out when Germany wants to do the same thing that they had already done. We already talked about how Germany was creating a stronger military. And the question, what conflicts arose in Europe related to imperialism based on the statements you've read, we actually, because of this new learning system and this new way of doing things, we're not, you didn't read statements related to it. I used to in the past give like a variety of like a timeline of things happening in Europe leading up to this. So for example, one of the things that happens is France and Germany both are like vying for power over this country in northern Africa called Morocco. That would be an example of imperialism happening. The N, the last acronym in Maine, stands for nationalism. Nationalism can kind of have two meanings. Lots of times we think of nationalism meaning you have extreme pride for like your country or your ethnicity and wanting what's best for it. So the reason that nationalism, pride and love for your country or your ethnicity or like your nationality, there's two reasons that this can lead to conflict leading into World War I. One is that there was competition between European countries to make their country seem better, more powerful, look more prestigious. And nationalism fueled or kind of led into things like imperialism and militarism. So because countries were so nationalistic, they wanted to look the strongest, they wanted to look um, the best. This leads them to want to imperialize or take over more places. This leads them to want to have the strongest military. The other reason that nationalism led to conflict is because, remember, there was nationalism can also mean like love for your ethnicity or your nationality. And so specifically in a place called the Balkans in like southeastern Europe, there was a struggle for power because there was various nationalities or ethnicities in the Balkans. They wanted to each be their own nation, like a country made up of that nationality, of like Serbians or Bosnians or Croatians or Greek people. At the same time that all these small little people groups want to be their own countries, they used to be part of what's called the Ottoman Empire, which is what's today like Turkey and other places in the Middle East. And so the Ottoman Empire was slowly losing control over the Balkans. Greece, for example, had gained its independence in 1830. And so now, as the Ottoman Empire is losing power over these places and they're gaining their independence and becoming their own countries, Austria-Hungary, which is a very powerful empire, controls a big part of Europe at this time. Austria sees this and they want to start adding more land to their own empire and annex or add in some of these provinces, for example, like Bosnia. And that's going to be very key because that's going to lead into this conflict that starts World War I. Now, Bosnia had a lot of Slavic people in it. And so people in Bosnia wanted to actually be part of Serbia, which was next door, and they had gained their independence. And so they want to gain their independence from Austria and don't want to be part of Austria. But in 1908, Austria did like annex them or add them into part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Russia also says that they will protect the Slavic people and help them gain their independence. So here you can see right here, the yellow and the blue of Greece, that is the
Excuse the interruption, please. All paraprofessionals, please meet in the commons area.
Sorry guys, I'm in the school, can't you tell? So they when we're talking about all these various ethnicities, they're in the Balkans here. You can see the Russian Empire over here. You can see Austria-Hungary right here. And here's, used to be all part of the Ottoman Empire, you can see. But over time, the Ottoman Empire loses this big chunk of land. They had already lost Greece by 1911. Now again, I talked about how Bosnians, so here's Serbia, they had gained their independence. And they were pink. They were Serbians. So all these different colors here are showing you the various ethnic groups in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. The pink you can see is Serbian. So if Serbia wasn't shown as gray, you would see a lot, it would all be basically pink. Okay? If you look here where the mouse is, right, you can see a lot of Serbian or pink there as well. Okay? That's because there were a lot of Serbian people there. And this is basically Bosnia. This is what the Austrian Empire had just taken and put in and said, this is going to now be part of Austria. And so there's a lot of frustrated Serbians, both in Serbia and in what's Bosnia, or now part of the Austrian Empire. They're frustrated because, right, they're like, well, we're not Austrian, we're Serbian, we should be part of Serbia. And so this is significant because this is kind of where the spark that starts the war is going to happen. It's going to be related to what's happening with this Bosnia now being part of Austria. Now, we're going to pause there just so you guys can take a break. Obviously, you could have taken a break. I'm just, for uploading purposes, not going to do the whole thing in one video. So you can, when you're ready, watch the second half, okay? Because there should be a link for that as well.